And we're live. Welcome to BRAP. It is March 18th, 2026. March Madness is here. The NCAA tournament. I don't know if the playthrough games were last night or tonight, but anyhow, tomorrow the tournament of 64 starts. I'm looking forward to it. I cannot wait. The NCAA tournament is actually one of my favorite collegiate sporting events. There's always there's always great games, upsets. So I'm definitely looking forward to that tomorrow. But I want to welcome everyone to the show. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Gamers are angry over DLSS 5. We have Crimson Desert reviews. One of the most highly anticipated games of 2026 is releasing tomorrow. I actually did catch a couple Twitch streamers last night streaming the game. And we do have some of the reviews. We'll go over some of the reviews and talk a little bit about that. And then also, as soon as Logic joins, we have some discussion around GDC. Also, going to discuss the Newzoo PC and console report that came out for 2026. It's their annual gaming report. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then what's going on, Jay Shell? But before we get to the topics, do me a quick favor. I'm going to drop a link in the live chat. Please share the link on your favorite social media platform. You know, whether it's X, Twitter, Blue Sky Social, let everyone know we're live. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Helps out the channel. Helps people find the channel as well. So, but yeah. So I'm actually in the middle. I'm having a little bit of a dilemma right now. Having a bit of a dilemma here. I am looking to upgrade my PC. I've had the current build. Well, the current build that I have, I've had for 4 years. Purchased it in 2022. And what's up, AC Gaming? And I'm at a point now. Look, I have a 3070. I have an Intel 12700K CPU. And I am at a point now where it's like, okay, I feel like it's time to upgrade. And I've waited a bit longer than I did when I upgraded my 3070 because I think I purchased my 2070 in 2018 or 2019 and then upgraded about 2 or 3 years later. So, okay, so about 2 years later, actually. So, but I had the 2070 for 2 years before I upgraded to the 3070. So, I waited 2 more years to upgrade. So, I'm looking at a 5080 right now, and I found a build at Micro Center. I'll share this. Let me share my screen here. So this is the build that I found at Micro Center. It's their power spec gaming PC. It comes with an AMD Ryzen 7 9800 X3D CPU, and it comes with the Nvidia RTX 5080. It comes with 32 gigs of DDR5, 6000 RAM, and a 2 terabyte solid state drive. I need to figure out. Need to see something here. What are those N.2s? I'm assuming they are. Yeah, here they are. Lightning fast, 2 terabyte, and NVMe SSD. Okay, so that's good. Okay. So this is it right here, right? It's white, it's got a white case, which I have right now. I have a white case. 5080, great CPU. It's got a radiator here if you see that. Actually, let me blow this up here a little bit. So this is it. I mean, this is one of the builds What's going on, Hero Down Under? Yeah, so AC Gaming says nice. So I look, I'm back and forth, right? I'm back and forth right now. I'm gonna upgrade. I'm gonna upgrade. Finally gonna upgrade. I have fun fact, read DLSS 5 was using two 5090s. Yeah, actually that's what I read too. I believe I read that on Digital Foundry. DLSS 5 was running on two 5090s. So it's gonna be interesting to see, yeah, which no normal person can do. Well, well, that's true. Um, it's gonna be interesting to see, um, what aspects of DLSS 5, if any, um, will be supported by, let's say, like something like the 5080 or other 50 series cards. I'm sure we'll find out more. It is DLSS 5's coming out this fall, but yeah. So this is the one of the builds that I'm looking at, right? Again, 5080, AMD Ryzen 7 9800 X3D processor. It's got RGBs. Got to have my RGBs. I don't like how the RGBs though are like around. Looks like they're around the center of the fan. It looks like the lights around the center of the fan. I don't know if I like that. I don't know. I kind of like the RGB around this part here, and not necessarily this middle part of the fan. But I mean, that might be kind of a nothing burger. All right, so here is it's got a Gigabyte B8050 gaming motherboard. It's got shows the airflow. And what's the price on this one again? This one is and it comes with this is going to give you Resident Evil Requiem, which I already have for the PS5 Pro, which I'm still playing. It's a great game, by the way. All right, so I need to go to. So the price on this right here, if you see, it's $2,500. It's $200 off right now. So that's one of the builds that I'm looking at. And then I'm looking at this build. AC Game says my PC is a potato. 2060 Super 8 gig Ryzen 5 5600X 32 gigs of memory. Wow, Arcade 4247 says every time I see 32 gigabytes of RAM, I should have listened to Slow-Mo. I'm assuming my assumption is Slow-Mo recommended that you go with 32 gigs of RAM. All right, let me share the other build that I have here that I'm looking at. All right, this one's at Costco. This one is a 32. This one has 32 gigabytes of RAM, 2 terabyte SSD, NDAP2 or NVMe M2. This one has a Ryzen 9. Again, this is an MSI, has the RTX 5080. You see it here. Now I need to pull up the all right, so here's what it looks like. I kind of look. I actually like the case that it comes in. It's MSI. Um, Here are the specs here. So this one, it's got an AMD Ryzen 9. It's the Ryzen 9 9900X, and this one's actually $2,300. So it's $200 difference, right, in pricing. So most of the folks that I've reached out to a couple people like Slow Mo, obviously Game Logic, Innate. Actually, one of the dads on my son's travel baseball team is a hardcore gamer. Like owns like everything. Like has a 4080 Super, has a Legion Go, has a Steam Deck, PS5 Pro. I mean, just Nintendo Switch 2. He has everything. He recommended that I go with the build from Micro Center, which is the one that has the and he said and he recommended the build from Micro Center because it has the AMD Ryzen 9800X 3D chip. Which he said is gonna give me better, frame consistency, um, and kinda better future-proof me. That's what his reasoning was. I thought it might be a better chip paired with the 5080, right? So that's kind of, so that's kinda where I'm at right now. I think Slow-Mo also recommended the power spec as well, which has that Ryzen 7 9800 X3D CPU. Arcade says, "Yeah, the time I got my 5070, he also told me to get the RAM. Prices went up shortly." Yeah. Oh man, that's tough. Yeah, RAM prices are crazy. I mean, I try to build something comparable on Micro Center's website, and just the RAM and the storage took a similar build to about 3 grand. So, yeah, so I'm kind of look, I'm back and forth. I'm looking at the cost difference here, $200. I'm thinking, "Okay, well, I'm gonna have to buy a new monitor," right? No, and I do actually have my current PC hooked up to my, 65-inch LG OLED, which has VRR and, all the bells and whistles. Max refresh rate is 120 though on it. I know the new models have 144. But yeah, but I'm not always gaming on my 35-inch OLED, or my 65-inch OLED. So I'm going to have to buy a new monitor. So that's where I'm at right now. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, $200, right? $200. That $200 that I'm saving, I could use towards a new monitor. But then I'm like, but then it's like, I think about the CPU, right? Like my understanding is like the Ryzen 9 9900X is, has more cores. It's better for multitasking, streaming, plus gaming, productivity, editing, etc. And probably not as good as the X3D chips for pure gaming performance. The Ryzen 7 9800 X3D has fewer cores, 8, but has that 3D V cache. And from what I understand, this is currently like the best gaming CPU design that you can get. Now, I've read, anywhere some have said, single digits in terms of better FPS and CPU intensive games, but I've also read 10 to 25% better FPS in CPU heavy games and smoother frame pacing. But again, I go back to the $20 to $200 difference. Like I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I could save $200 and then use that $200 towards a new monitor, which I'm going to have to get. So there is a 5080 in my future. I just need to figure this out. I'm going to sleep on it tonight. I think I've talked to Logic to death about this. Logic actually recommended the Costco build here, the one with the 9900X. Yeah, he actually prefers the 360 millimeter AIO cooling system that's on the Costco one. I think the one at Micro Center is a 240 millimeter AIO as opposed to the 360. So look, I've got decisions to make. Probably will end up. Yeah, AC Gabe says RAM price is crazy. I stopped by Micro Center one day and couldn't believe my eyes. Yeah, it's like RAM's like gold right now. Makes me think, if I could go back in the future and hop in a DeLorean, there's a couple things I would do. One, I would have picked up on some RAM price or some RAM before prices just skyrocketed. Like it's just crazy. The gaming legend with the Canadian $5 says, "Thank God for my wallet because I no longer have FOMO seeing clips of Crimson Desert. Cannot wait for Saros next month. Why not splurge on the 5090? No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to splurge on the 5090. This is kind of where I want to stay, that $2,000 range or 25. I set a budget anywhere between 2 to 2,500. $2,000 to 2,500. That's my budget. Could I spend more? Sure. But do I want to? No. There's other things that I want to buy. At some point, I want to upgrade the headlights on my Silverado 2500 HD. I don't like the. You could buy third party headlights, and those run and look very similar to, if you're familiar with the Chevy Silverados. The aftermarket headlights they sell look very similar to the ones that come with the, I think, the LTZ line and High Country. And I have an LT. But those headlights are like $2,000 for two. So I'd like to get those at some point later this year. But last year Gaming Ledger, I was actually you can get that DLSS 5. I guess I could, right? Yeah, that's the thing, Gaming Ledger. Like, I don't know. I'm interested to see if they're gonna have if we'll have some aspects of DLSS on the 5080 cards. So I don't know, Gaming Leisure, I don't know if you saw the 2 builds that I'm looking at, but, yeah, I'm really back and forth on this. I'm really back and forth. Because I think the MSI is a great deal. For $2,300 for 5080, 32 gigs of RAM, that ain't too shabby. But then I'm looking at, I'm looking at the Micro Center one, their ProSpec build, and that's not bad either. I mean, it's $2,500. And actually, that normally they had it retailing for they had that for $2,700 before it going on sale. Let me get Game Logic in here. Actually, speaking of DLSS 5, we actually have none other than Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang, who is sporting another black leather jacket. What's going on, Logic?
Nothing much, man. How are you doing?
I'm just rambling on here about my inability to make a decision on what desktop PC I want to go with. The back and forth.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's the less expensive one you have up on the screen, right? Like I would, I would go with that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of this one I would have to get delivered logic. I wouldn't be able to go pick it up. It's sold out at my local Costco. I'd have to go to Leesburg, Virginia, which is probably about 17 and a half miles, 18 miles from where I live.
Look, you've actually driven me in so many circles that like, so normally my shtick, right? Because it's what I do for a living is to like assess the customer and try and find like the right fit for them. But you've twisted me around so many times that like I have an inability to assess what your requirements are. So now I'm just doing what everybody else does and just giving you my personal preference. So my personal preference would be in your situation, and absolutely this is the thing that I process every single time. I would get the 9900X because I go for the most compute that I can have, and I don't worry about that single digit percentage difference. In fact, like the two boxes I have, the RTX 4080 and 5080 in, the first one that I built, I had to decide between a 7950X and one of the high end X3D parts, and I went with the 7950X. Then when I built the other box, I was like, okay, like there's nothing else higher that I need, like in the 7000 series, like generation. So then I built an X3D part.
And you haven't noticed anything like in terms of like, I mean, there are not going to be any major deltas between performance, right?
No, like you're never. I mean, first of all, from just a end user perspective, you'll never see it. Like the only reason I would be able to assess it is because I'm constantly running metrics and tools.
Yeah,
But like,
I mean, I run MSI Afterburner. You know, like I'm always like checking frames and stuff when I'm playing on PC. Yeah,
yeah, but you look at it like you don't post like test criteria and outputs.
no,
and,
no, I'm not doing that. Yeah,
so like I would only ever see it if I happen to be testing like the same game on those two boxes back to back, which like I almost never do because you know if I'm gonna test across two hardware sets, I may test across the other three hardware sets, and it may not be that one. So like it's like I've never been conscious of like I've never made like a deliberate conscious like look, just just based on gut feel. Like no, there's no like major difference between the two.
yeah, yeah. And the other thing I've read about the X3D chips is that like I've read. I know you said like there isn't going to be like really noticeable difference in terms of frames, but I've read things like 10 to 25% better FPS in CPU heavy games, smoother frame pacing. But like, what is that like? I mean,
but like there's like the number so first of all, CPU intensive games tend not to be good games. Right. So when we talk about something as CPU bound, we're typically talking about something that's not great. So like theoretically, just by like reviews and stuff, like you shouldn't be coming across too many of them. Every once in a while, like a really great game, like Blizzard games tend to be more CPU intensive than than other games of their ilk. But in general, like you shouldn't, like, given the types of games that you play, you shouldn't be coming across that too much. And then if you're not like, concurrently video encoding or doing capture or something, like it shouldn't cause a problem. If you're trying to do game capture on the same PC that you're on a CPU intensive game, then when you hit those CPU spikes, right, you're going to see hitches in your OBS capture. But like you're not doing stuff like that, so you should be fine.
yeah. Nate's over here saying, "BRAP, sir, we still hesitating."
No, I mean, so innate. You can tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm speaking for you, but I think innate and slow mo are more of the mind to get the X3D part, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And I definitely know. Like I've talked to slow mo enough that like I know like the benchmarks that I use to decision make and what he looks at to decision make are different. Not that they're like right or wrong. They're just different, and I know if you looked at them, they would produce different results. So they're not. I mean, this is the motorcycle problem, BRAP. Like if you're a motorcycle rider and you ride Japanese 4-cylinder bikes, like at any point in the year, if you look at Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, and Honda, you're never going to go wrong with any of those bikes, right? That's what back when Cycle World used to do reviews and see all these yahoos, yelling and screaming, as you have found out about trucks, yelling and screaming about the differences in the bike. Like none of those bikes are bad. right? So you're going to make a good choice either way.
It's almost like the high end, if you will, AT tire market for trucks. Like if you go with the Mickey Thompson Baja Boss or the Falcon Wild Peak AT4s, I mean, you're going to get a good tire regardless. Yeah,
you're really scratching at edges, and really, I mean, I would boil it down to who do you want to buy it from? You know, do you want to buy it from Costco? Or do you want to buy it from Micro Center? Micro Center's probably got your back a little more, right? If you have a problem.
Oh, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that logic, and I haven't even looked into like. Well, actually, it says our online price includes 2-year warranty. Oh, so Costco's including the warranty in that price.
Yeah, I don't know what the Micro Center warranty policy is.
You have to pay for it. It's like another $200 or something for 2 years. Let me look at this real quick because this is so here we go. So you get a $300 manufacturer savings. Actually for 11 more days. While supplies last, terms, conditions, online price. Our online price includes technical support, 90-day return policy, 2-year warranty. All right. So Costco extends the manufacturer warranty on the following items for up to 2 years from the date of warehouse purchase or date of delivery if the item was purchased online. Okay. So they're throwing that in there in the price. Huh.
Yeah, I would check with Nate again because Nate's saying you gave him bad information and he wasn't clear that the other thing you were looking at was the 9900X. So I don't know if his recommendation will change.
He's looking at, hold on, what did he say here? He's looking at the 900X. My bad. Carry on. No, actually, no, that was on the there's actually, I actually did mention that to you, Nate. That one had the 900X. And then Nate says, I have the 900X 3D. Do what you will with that.
Yeah, and like I said, so for longevity, what I like on this one is that it has the 360 millimeter AIO, which just with the processors I build with now, I've told you, like I experimented with the 240 millimeters when I first went to water cooling, and I'm at the point now where I don't build on anything less than a 360 millimeter. Like I just won't do 240 for temps to keep stuff under control.
Yeah, I will say, Logic, I do trust your recommendation. I mean, your recommendations, because you actually did help me build. I put together the current build I have right now, and it's been solid. Nate says agreed. I only do the 360 millimeter. AIOs. Okay, so that's. I mean, yeah. I think I know which one I'm leaning towards now. I'll tell you, it's probably the Costco one. And I'll say this because it's $200, right? Plus they're including the 2-year warranty. If I get a 2-year warranty through, what the hell is it called? Micro Center, that's $280 in addition to, the cost of the PC.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, my feeling is like adding that $300 on top of a $2,500 PC, regardless, is like that's not a zone that I like to be in. Mm-hmm. I will say, for that $300, you're probably getting on-site service. You're probably taking your PC to Micro Center, and like the dude and Micro Center. Look, you know, I tend not to shop at Micro Center, but what I will say is from the impressions I've had going in there and talking to the guys, they are like the Iraqi Red Guard of
oh my goodness, man.
They're just like heads and shoulders above anything you would get like from a Geek Squad service. So
yeah, with a 2-year warranty with Costco, I think this would involve you shipping the desktop back to, I don't know, Costco, the manufacturer. Yeah, MSI. Yeah, and I've lived this through. I just did this with my son's baseball bat. I didn't get the warranty at Dick's Sporting Goods, which I could have done, but it would have been like an extra $170 on top of the $400 that I paid for the bat. But I didn't mind shipping the bat out. That's a bit different because if I do ship a desktop, I'm without a PC,
Well, and you've got to, I mean, you've got to disconnect everything, bring everything down. I mean, it's probably, I don't know how you do it. Like for me, it's you're taking it down to UPS, paying them to pack it,
Yep.
right? Because I don't want to be liable for packing it and then it being like dorked up when it gets to the other side. You got moving parts in this thing. So yeah, I mean, it's not of zero value, but I don't know that I would put that much value on it. Like I said, what I like is the 360 millimeter AIO.
Yeah. And then again, like I was thinking about it's $200, right? Like I'm gonna have to buy new because I remember that's one of the first things you said to me. You're like, BRAP, you're gonna have to buy a new monitor.
Yeah,
the monitor.
You've got about an $800 monitor purchase that you got to make.
Oh my gosh, that hurts.
Because it makes no sense to get that GPU and run it on a 1440p monitor.
No. And you recommended the monitor that I have now.
Yes. Yeah. And so the other monitors I will be recommending to you will be for you to either go OLED or large screen 4K IPS.
Oh my gosh, man. All right. So well, I think I know the direction I'm leaning towards then because of I'm going to spend more money. So if I order this online, actually I do need to. I just realized this. I need to renew my Costco membership. I haven't done that. It expired last month, last month. So I need to do that. Yeah, Nate says the 9900X is trading blows with the X3D. From what I'm seeing, you will be good. All right, now I appreciate that insight, Nate. All right, yeah, this one Hamp, it's out of stock at my local Costco, so I have to get it delivered. And we actually be delivered by March 23rd. So this Monday coming up. BRAP, just get a what? Just get a projector? For my PC? What?
Maybe she means a USB projector, something that connects over USB. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Just get I see what you're saying. I said a USB. Okay. Yeah, I don't know about projector. I don't think I could put a projector in my gaming room. Yeah, I don't know about that. All right. So let's wrap up the BRAP's back and forth over which gaming PC is going to get. So Logic GDC 2026. And I forgot to pull up your post, but you did put something out there that about some of the news coming out of GDC. And I actually didn't get a chance to catch up on some of the news that came out. I know Nintendo had a thing going on, or Nintendo had a what was it? I read something about Nintendo. They had a I forget what it was. But anyhow, so yeah, there's some things that came out of GDC that were news related. I know you mentioned kind of like you wanted to see a bit more coverage out of GDC. And I think was that more tech related coverage? Is that what you're referring to? I forget. I'm sorry. I was trying to find the tweet. I can't find it now.
I mean, I would say tech and like financial.
Yeah.
There were a few presentations. There was a minority presentation that I wish I'd covered. And it was just more. My tweet was more about like, look, there's a lot of things that were presented at GDC. And I like, look, I mean, I like Major Nelson. I kind of grandfather him in, from, the past years, but I'm like, he's like, the Project Helix is like a developer facing thing. And I'm like, again, lots of people have listened to the Moore's Law is Dead episode now. And I'm like, and they concur with what I'm saying. I'm like, if you're a developer, like they put out a whole heck of a lot. They really cause you more questions to ask. Really answered any. But it was more about how like these things that people talk about in the gaming community on Twitter, I will assert from a relatively uninformed place, are things that were covered at GDC. Ben Porter, the senior consultant at Newzoo, who put together the State of the Industry report for them, gave a presentation, and that presentation wasn't covered. He also then sat on a panel with, I think, 4 other industry members who have financial insight into what's going on in the industry, and that wasn't covered. there was an Epic Games presentation. There were a couple of Epic Games presentations on how to tune UE5 and some of the dynamics of UE5 and performance. I'm like, that would have been great because like people have this impression that like UE5 is just horrible, but then you have Tim Sweeney saying no, UE5 isn't horrible. It has some best practices, right, that we recommend, and a lot of times devs aren't doing that. So it would have been really great to get somebody to sit in on that to give us insight on like what is the truth, and what things can be done about UE5.
Hey, so let me ask you a question, Logic. So Tim Sweeney saying that developers are choosing not to utilize, I guess, the full suite of tools, whatever, of Unreal Engine 5. Did he get specifically why that's happening, or especially what tools are not using?
I don't remember him saying specific tools. What I remember him saying was more like, here's the checklist of best practices, right? And here's what you need to do to get a performant UE5 game out. And he's like, not everybody's like going and finding those things. Not everybody's seeking out, right, that knowledge base and that knowledge transfer. And then not everybody's aligning to that.
And and it's funny you mentioned that. Like, I don't recall. Again, I missed some of the GDC coverage. The one about the financials or trends in the gaming industry. I think Chris String, was it Chris String who interviewed or covered that?
So he did an interview with Ben Porter, and that's where Ben Porter mentions that, I'm actually out here to like do this presentation. So, I mean, I've seen some like TikTok clips of like things that he talked about. But I haven't seen like an article, with, and granted, I haven't checked GameIndustry.biz. GameIndustry.biz, what I called out when I put out this tweet was, to me, this is the same thing that we had a couple of years ago where LaToya Peterson, who I forget exactly what her CV says, but has experience with obtaining funding. And this is where I said, a thing that needs to be understood in the gaming industry is like outside of the traditional publisher backing model where you go and you pitch your game and the publisher says, hey, we'll fund you, that outside of that, games really get funded, to me, in very similar ways to a movie. So when a movie deal gets put together, it's typically not like the picture studio who funds everything. They put money in. All these people who put product placements, right, in your movie get in. So, Ford puts some money in, JP Morgan puts some money in, right? Microsoft put money in because you're using Surface laptops in the thing. Venture capital and equity investment firms and stuff put money in, and so you get the money put together with like these 5, 6, 7 to 8 different forms of funding. Similar here. In fact, a recent story from one developer who said they were turning money Microsoft had given them back in because they were protesting and boycotting Microsoft's support of the war on Iran. And more supporting Israel, and I think the company has some people of Jewish descent who are owners, but they were like, yeah, we don't feel good like taking Microsoft's money. But in that discussion, they mentioned that like the Microsoft funding was not the entirety of the funding of their project; that their project was funded by like 4 or 5 other pieces. So that type of insight, again, I go back to LaToya Peterson. LaToya Peterson's presentation in GDC 2024 was about how like she described this as a house of cards, and the house of cards is like collapsing. That as venture capitalist firms pull out, as equity investment firms pull out, you have these huge swaths of funding sources that are now not available to indie devs, so they're being exposed to more risk. And she mentioned that this is part of what you're seeing when we talk about the number of games that are coming out that are not being successful. But what we got really robustly around the 2024 timeframe, because remember, 2024 was the year of the Xbox business update that happened in late February 2024, and that's when this whole dialogue of games need to be on every platform, games need to be multi-platform, exclusives don't make sense. That's where, right, because Phil Spencer started saying it. I mean, he'd been saying it, but it really started like catching fire that year and really became a major theme. I'll call it a major political theme that year. And so like no one except GameIndustry.biz covered LaToya Peterson's talk at GDC 2024. But what we got out of GDC 2024 was that, people were out at GDC and claimed that every developer was talking about how games need to be multi-platform and games need to be on every platform. And I'm like, well, that's not the full story of what was discussed at GDC, but we, those of us who don't go, and very much the consumers, and some people have mentioned some things to me. Oh, well, you should go to GDC, and I'm like, that's not the point, right? The point is like this is literally the full-time job of the journalists who go out there. This is like the point is not for me to go out there, right, and be the consumer advocate champion. The point is that we have a lot of people who this is their full-time job and who assert that they are consumer advocates, but we're not getting presented like all this information. Like I don't need to be told this information. I read the GI Biz article.
Yeah.
I read Latoya Peterson's article.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we need, the cadre of journalists who go out there to not be hyper-focused on Project Helix, which there was Project Helix was a 30-minute presentation. It should, for anybody who has any kind of technical awareness, you should know that probably not a lot of information came out of a 30-minute presentation.
No, absolutely not. Definitely not in 30 minutes. And the cover of Project Helix seemed to suck a lot of the air out of the room. Because I just, again, I'm looking at social media. A lot of the chatter was about Project Helix that I feel like GDC was like, oh, Xbox can talk about Project Helix, and some of the other stuff got kind of lost in that noise. And I was guilty of it too. Like I was hyper focused on Project Helix because I thought when I thought it was interesting, Microsoft and was kind of getting ahead of really, I guess they get ahead that they would reveal like the next whatever the next gen Helix is, the next gen Xbox, that they would announce this or reveal it so soon. But yeah, I think there's like you talked about the article, and I know we talked about it 2 years ago, the funding issues with I'm sorry, what was her name again? I'm sorry, Logic. I forgot her name.
Latoya Peterson. And hey, for guys who say I'm botting in the chat, just maybe talk that out with some other people. I'm listening to the YouTube feed on my end on a separate PC, and I don't hear me botting coming out in the live feed. So just let me know if other people are hearing the same thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
I think that's important because, especially like from a coverage, like something like that, right? Because those are things that actually have impact to gamers, right? Because if studios can't secure funding, that means that these studios aren't making games that would eventually make their way to us, right? And so that shrinks the pool of development studios or studios that are able to create games, and that limits it to, like the big publishers, right? As the ones that have the ability to fund projects. So I think I don't know. I could probably guess why we probably don't see that covered as much. It probably has to do with some of the. I don't want to say that everyone goes to GDC Logic. Everyone that goes there is a fan, right? They're going there as a fan. But I think there are some people that are there as fans and want to kind of rub elbows and be seen, right? And it's more about that than it is actually covering some of the things that are impacting the industry or going to those talks where developers are talking about, in this case, talking about funding. And in the case of Ben Porter of Newzoo, I pulled up the article because Game Industry Biz actually did sit down with him at the GDC event to talk about Roblox Minecraft players are less likely to play traditional AAA video games. I think it's an important conversation to have, important thing to discuss. So, I'm sorry, go ahead, Logic. I think I may have cut you off here.
No, but it also, would have lent itself to is a greater understanding of, why some people are still taking exclusive deals. Because
that's a great point. Yeah,
because if you go and you're seeking funding and you can't get funding, and a publisher is willing to back you, but that publisher is a platform owner.
Great point.
And they say, we're willing to put skin in on the game, but we want that game to be exclusive because we need it to help drive our platform business. And that's part of the mixture of like why those things happen. They're not. I'm not saying that that's a singular source. I'm saying that's part of the dynamic.
Yeah, it's not just so and so money hatting for the sake of money hatting.
Yeah, well, I'm firmly in the camp that like if you're on a podcast that talks in those Urban Dictionary terms, then that's an indicator that that's a console war podcast that I don't want to be on.
Yeah,
that's cap, money hatting, things like that.
Keep the same energy.
Yeah, I think those are people creating content for the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't catch the game industry article here. I didn't read it when it came out last week, but they did. Where's hold on a sec here. They discussed they actually connected with Ben Porter. And actually, and I do want to discuss the latest report from Newzoo because I don't think we discussed that when it came out last week. Actually, I know we did, but interesting, great read though. Like he talks about he explained that fancy visuals have become less important. He said that I think there's been a shift in the last 10 years where the idea of chasing graphics has kind of faded. Although I think Jensen Hung has something to say about that. And now you see the most popular games on the planet are not the most graphically high fidelity games. I mean, Roblox being the clear example of that. I look at some of the games, Roblox games that my kids play, and I'm like, what are you guys playing? Like this looks, and he said, we saw that in playtime, he said we saw that its playtime grew around 50% year over year, which is huge. A lot of that was driven by experiences like Steal a Brain Rot, which my kids and their friends were all over. The game, I don't even understand the concept around Steal a Brain Rot, but the kids were like all about it. There's also another one now. I think Rivals is on another popular Roblox game, which the kids are playing now. But he also says the question is, what else are these people playing? What is the implication for the rest of the game industry? And when we look at that, we see that Roblox and Minecraft players are playing a lot of the other really big top 10 live service games. So there's some overlap here. This game includes Fortnite, which has 55% overlap with Roblox. Players have 46% overlap with Minecraft players. I guess for me, Logic, when I read these things, this is kind of what I've said in the past before. I just think a lot of people focus on, because remember, the narrative for a long time was, well, it's all about live service, right? That's the future. That's what people are going to be playing. And I think it's a little more nuanced than just live service is the future. I think we've talked about this on this show. I think what I'm seeing is that, generally speaking, gaming consumers are just diverse now, very diverse in terms of the type of different or types of games they choose to play. We clearly have people who are playing. We look at Circana numbers, right? You look at Resident Evil is actually doing really well. Resident Evil Requiem, that's a single player game, right? We see single player games charting Circana, and then you have the games that have high player engagement, and games like Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox. I have to think people look at it as kind of an either or thing, and I don't think it's that. I just think it's that the consumer market is just so diverse. That you have much different than when we were growing up playing video games, where it's just diverse now. You have, consumers that play different things, and these games exist in their own space. And, you have some consumers kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You have some consumers that will do both, play single player games and then play these live service games and kind of dip their toes in those different genres. But, I just find a lot of this information, a lot of the stuff that we read in terms of trends and an overlap, just very interesting because I just think it just speaks to the dynamic and how diverse the gaming industry is right now. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing. Nate says consumers are not only diverse, but it's been that way for a long time, especially on PC, where you frequently have people who only play one or two games for a decade. I can't imagine playing one or two games for a decade, but I'm sure they are. Well, actually, I know people who've done that. I have some. I know people, friends who used to play World of Warcraft, and that's the only thing they ever played for years. So,
oh yeah, and you have the types that I refer to often, which they play Fallout. Pick a flavor, with and they load 99 mods. And
that's great
when they do a run through of the game, they maybe have 8 of those mods loaded, but they just keep playing through that game and playing through that game and playing the DLC with like different packages of mods loaded, and that like occupies their time for like 40 hours as they do a run, and then they just do it over again, and like that's all that they do. And then maybe if like a Cyberpunk comes out, like maybe they buy that, but like that,
yeah,
it's like once every 5 years.
I mean, I've lived in that. Well, I mean, there was a time where I only played Baldur's Gate 3. No, I didn't spend years playing it, but I put about 400 hours in the game, and that's all I played. I didn't want to play anything else. There was a time early on I was playing a lot of PC Sims, more specifically like SimCity. Like I literally only played that and Age of Empires. Like those are the only like two PC, and I like for a year I probably only played those two games. This is like years and years ago, decades
Oh
ago.
yeah, that's when you were part of PC Potato Nation.
Oh my goodness. Potato.
Then you bought that 3070 rig and like enjoyed us in the modern age, and it's been all about frames and image quality since then.
Wait a minute. What did you say to me the other day when I told you I was looking at a 5080?
Oh yeah, you're moving inside the gated neighborhood. Like
oh my goodness.
You bought the 3070, you made it to the subdivision, right? You lived on a cul-de-sac. You didn't have people parking their cars in their front yard anymore. Right? But like you buy the 5080, you're moving inside the gated community now.
I said I was living in a cul-de-sac. where all the houses are look all the same. They're all cookie cutter, I'm the only differentiating the house that I may have got the stainless steel appliance upgrade. My neighbors didn't.
you got the covered porch, whereas everybody else like just straight up to the front.
Oh, Logic, you're actually body now. I can hear it now.
Yeah, you are occasionally.
Yeah, so. yeah, Logic, you're body now.
Yeah, I said you are too occasionally. So I think it's both of us at times.
Yeah, it might. You know what? It might be a StreamYard thing. It might be something with StreamYard. I'm wondering.
Yeah, it could be. It tends to only last for like a brief blip of a second.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, so I spent time playing those types of games. And there was a time where for months I'd play like Unreal Tournament, Quake. So all right, let me share this. I want to go to Lodge, do you have anything else you want to say about GDC before we move on?
No, that pretty much covers it. What I would do is I would go to, for people who are interested in that stuff, I would go to the GDC page and look at the agenda and just like stay out on the hunt for, news articles that are run about that stuff. I know I mentioned it, and I forget what his name is. Not Red Dragon. He's that guy's on a different program, but Red Tech or something like that.
Red Gaming Tech.
Yeah, I think so. He's like a big weightlifter or something like that.
Yeah. We've had him on BRAP before.
Okay, yeah. I mentioned that, and he said, "Oh, I did coverage of. I guess he was at GDC.
He did.
He said I did a quick overview of the DirectX stuff. I'll probably go on a deeper dive, but I did go over some of the bigger rocks. So I told him I'll hunt down his content and take a look at that.
Because, actually, I saw that exchange. You didn't mention that. Yeah, Red Gaming Tech. By the way, like he's got a great YouTube channel, and we've had him on the show. I got to get him back on. It's been years since I've had him on, but he's he puts out good content. Yeah, go ahead, Logic.
No, that was one of my things. I'm like, look, we spent all this time and energy on Project Helix, and I'm like, Project Helix doesn't arrive for at least 2 years, right? And it's highly, has a high potential to be impacted and slide further to the right. I'm like, this DirectX stuff that they talked about is like literally going to be in DirectX like by the end of the year. And we'll start having impact. Like that for me personally was things I was more interested in.
Yeah. By the way, Hero Diner says I used to play soccer games for a decade. I used to only play Madden. Like the mid 90s at some point. I think I only played Madden for a little bit. We used to get together, and I used to get together with my buddies, and we get together like I don't know, we get like a case of beer and just play Madden all night. So yeah, I gotta get him back on the show, Logic. That reminds me, I need to message him. All right. I'm sorry, Logic. Any other thoughts on GDC? I know you're talking about like DirectX.
No.
All right. Yeah. Do you want to move on to Newzoo's PC and Console Game Report 2026? So I actually like this report because it talks about market trajectory, attention to value allocation, market concentration, business model viability. See some of the key takeaways here. Market trajectory, PC growth remains structurally supported with steady player expansion, underpinning sustained revenue growth. Console growth has returned. I believe when they say return, I think that's post-COVID, right? I think they mentioned that in the report.
Right,
I kind of
right.
yeah. Console growth has returned, but remains premium and cycle driven as hardware momentum and major releases lift spend despite limited player expansion. I think we talked about that, the console gaming being a mature market. People saying, "Oh, well, it's dying." No, it's not dying. Regional dynamics reinforce the split. Growth markets are driving player scale, especially on PC. I think that's something that came out of GDC. I thought I heard something about GDC. Maybe it was, I forget. There's an analyst firm. I can't remember the name of it. Is it Nico? I think Nico Partners or Nico. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think they talked about that kind of the growing markets in Asia as something that was discussed a bit at GDC.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've
Yeah.
been beating that drum for close to a year, right? That like
Mhm.
the growth market is APAC.
Yeah, you have him.
And remember that goes hand in hand with my, again, beating the drum about how you're not going to grow that market by putting Halo, Gears of War, Fortnite, and other things right on screens, right, and grow gamers just because you put them on a different screen.
Or The Last of Us.
Well, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why one that I like to pick out as the case
Yeah.
study, because I always say, like, look, if you present a character named Ellie whose like hobby is playing guitar, and guitar is not a core instrument for that culture, then it doesn't resonate. But you look at something like Ghost of Yotai, right, where the character, right, the instrument hobby is a traditional instrument aligned with that culture, and that can probably resonate a lot more. So you see, what PlayStation is doing with like the Hero Project. And I talked, when Grub got me in to do some freelance work for GamesBeat, and I covered their summer games. I can't remember their summer game summit. And one of the panels that I sat in on was these guys who were investors and people who were involved in funding in the gaming industry. They talked about how, like, part of the news, they regionally chase like where they see talent blooms map that historically throughout the industry you actually see studios popping off right in a concentrated countries, and that's the signal to like head over there and see what's going on, and then to get money in there to catch the new studios, right, that come out of that, because that was Ukraine a while before Russia invaded. And then like they talked about, now we're starting to see some heat build up in like Turkey. So that's part of like the dynamic. But, part of that is also getting to those developers where there's about to be a talent bloom, where maybe they're making culturally relevant content that like your own studios can't do. Sorry, Brad.
Yeah, that's a great point. It almost seems you mentioned the investments in China. Like we talk about Sony, the China Hero Project, right? They're not looking to bring like that's why I said The Last of Us. They're not looking to bring The Last of Us or a God of War game to China. Those games may not resonate with the Chinese culture, but you see a game like Wukong, right? Black Myth Wukong. You see a game like I forget the other game that's coming out. What was the other game that recently came out?
Is that the sequel to Black Myth that's coming out?
Yeah, there's a sequel, but there was also another game that came out that didn't review well. Was part of the China Hero Project. I don't remember, but I feel like we're seeing a lot. I mean, even Microsoft's making investments in other. I know they're investing in Africa. I think they're also investing in China, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like maybe Sony. I could be wrong. I feel like Sony's a little bit more. Like we hear more about the China Hero Project from Sony. The India Hero Project, Sony's involved into. That's another project Sony's involved with in terms of like incubating relationships with developers and cultivating, different games coming out of those markets. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, I think those are you talk about like these areas of the world where you see talent blooming. I think we're seeing that in China right now, um, and even in Korea, like South Korea, we're seeing that. Um, so, but it's interesting because I was like we talked about like the cost of game development, right? We talked about that on this show quite a bit. And I often wonder, like, I think maybe Logic at some point that maybe we start seeing more of like, do you like, actually, let me ask you a question. Do you think we see more like AAA titles maybe in the future coming out of those regions because it's maybe cheaper to develop those types of games?
Well, I
Because
mean,
of because of the because it's just cheaper. The human capital is cheaper, right?
well, that's one, but also because we're getting those countries more and more advanced tools, right? And
Yeah.
granted, those
Mm.
tools are growing out, worldwide, but the point is that you potentially have talent blooms going off that can take advantage of them. And we kind of segued into a large talk about talent, right? But to circle back,
Yeah.
it's because that is where the growth is and where the bigger numbers of gamers are coming into the market, right, to do spend. So you look at the United States where there's already a lot of, gaming market of significant size, and you're not really growing it. So if you want growth, right, the point is that you probably need to start targeting some of these other regions that have high growth potential, that hasn't been capped out. Because when we talk about all of these things, my personal
Great
belief is when
point.
we talk about all of these things, Roblox, Minecraft, Battle Res, like there's always this dialogue around them, like, oh, well, like that's the thing that's successful. So it only makes sense to do that. Yeah, and the gaming market is not a series of absolutes, right? And Ben Porter in his
That's a
interview
great
with
point.
Ring talked about that, how
Yeah.
it's very difficult to take any one of these things out and say that it's a truism. The gaming market is full of contradictory statistics, right? So it's a matter of picking which one you want to believe in and placing your bets in terms of studios like making
Mhm.
these gambles. But for outside observers, like you can't pick a one thing and stand on that square and say that's it, because that's not it. Like the very next day, a game will come out that breaks that rule. So again, in these countries where there's already capped growth, like you have to go look at where there's not growth. I constantly point to Roblox and Minecraft. Oh, all the growth is in Roblox. It only makes sense to do that. I'm like, guys, you do understand that there's only two, that those two are what we call UGC games, so they're user generated content games. And I'm like, do you not think that it's funny that those have been the only two big successful UGC type games? That probably means because the market is saturated to the point where we're not like the market doesn't support additional suppliers of that particular type of content. If people want to play UGC stuff, they're going to go play Roblox and Minecraft. And I would say to a lesser extent, I would include The Sims in that. But we had Nights on PlayStation, and it got to a point where PlayStation said that that's not doing what we need it to do, and they pulled Media Molecule off of it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Logic. Yeah, and that point that was Ben Porter, I think you mentioned, right? That talked about like the different trends. I forget what you said. Something about the different trends in the industry, how you
Yeah,
can't
that
really
that you
put
can't
your
point to any one of those
can't
things
point to
as
yeah,
a singular truism.
yeah. That one will contradict the other, I think. I don't know if that's exactly what you said, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I'm sorry. Just corrected me. Dreams. I
yeah.
always when I'm thinking dreams, I always think of Nights, which I think was the Dreamcast game. I think way back in the day
Mm,
or whatever. I don't know. But yes, yeah, dreams. Sorry.
yeah. I think that one of the things too that yeah, as I look at it, like the Newzoo, when I glanced it over earlier today, I think, and I know something we've talked about on this show quite a bit is ARPU, and one of the things like people often talk about like truisms, right? People often overstate the decline of consoles, right? Oh, they're dying. And what's interesting here is that Newzoo says, regional dynamics reinforce a split, right? Growing markets are driving player scale, especially on a PC, often at lower ARPU, right? And we talk about the ARPU being high on consoles, right? And it says like while mature markets continue to generate higher console spend but face lower demographic expansion, like so that's like I think that's something that people I don't think understand or take into account. They just see, oh well, higher PC means more money, more spend, and therefore consoles are um, going to become irrelevant or obsolete at some point. It's like, well, no. I mean, if you look at the console spend or ARPU's higher on consoles, and so long as that trend continues, like you're going to have developers, publishers still support consoles. You're going to have Sony, Nintendo still make hardware, and even Microsoft to an extent. Um, so I think it's important to kind of point that out because I think people often miss that when they're discussing, you know, um, the PC versus console conversation, which I think is a bit ridiculous, but
it's not differentiating markets. It's just assuming they're all like the markets and submarkets and segments just because it's all gaming. Like it's
exactly. Yeah.
I love your analogy, the lemonade stand, right? Lemonade stand's probably not going after high value customers. You're probably not going to get away with selling $5 cups of lemonade, right?
Yeah.
So it probably makes sense because your lemonade's not highly differentiated. Probably makes sense to just sell your lemonade for 50 cents and get as many customers to come by because your ARPU is probably just going to be 50 cents, right, per customer.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, video streaming industry, right? If somebody's a video streaming customer, right, Netflix doesn't offer like 9 different services for you to pack stuff onto. So their ARPU is probably like that 20 something bucks per customer. So
yeah,
they're building a certain type of business. Now you shift over to Amazon. Amazon is a business that probably is concerned about ARPU. They're probably concerned about how many pack-ons do these people add to their Amazon Prime account, and then how much do they then do follow-on rates. We talk about customer lifetime value, CLV. I've got the customer in, right? They like 2-day shipping, they like Amazon Prime, but then how much is that customer going to spend in my store? Like these are gateway drugs. So that matters differently to Amazon than it does to the lemonade stand person, right? But we often get these conversations that just talk about the lemonade stand as if like everybody should be doing what the lemonade stand is doing, and that doesn't really make sense in business.
The conversation is always overly reductive. And actually, Josh is very reductionist. Like, yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's oversimplified. At the lemonade stand announced. I forgot about that. No, but it's right. It's flattened. It's oversimplified, and it's like put in the same bucket. Well, gaming's gaming. It's like no, yeah, I understand gaming is gaming, but it's a bit more complex than just gaming being gaming. We're talking about different markets. We're talking about different subset of consumers, and those things are important. We're talking about different spend too, right? So, yeah, that's why. Yeah, go ahead.
And the point of right we've been talking about for the last couple of minutes. Yeah. I'm sure somebody will come by and clip it, right, and claim a thing, right? The point is not to say so that PlayStation has the right business model. Our point is to say, as we've always said, great Scott, man. We've said this so many times over the last 4 years, but we keep getting like, oh, you only do this one. No. The point is for us to say the industry supports multiple business models. Consumers are better benefited when there are multiple business models. We don't 100%. Need a monolithic one-size-fits-all, right, type of supplier-buyer relationship. It's great that there are different things to go after. It's great that they're all services and they're doing different services. It's great that they're all having different content strategies. It's great that they all have different platform strategies. And we need that. And consumers are actually benefited. Consumers are not benefited most by everybody doing Game Pass. Because we have on the market that are more concerned about high quality, concerned about purchases. They don't want the, all you can eat buffet style, multi-time, every subscription that will actually make those people spend less money. So, it's clear, it is proven, it is objectively sound that the market right now supports different business models. And so we should continue to encourage the suppliers to provide that because that's what the demand signal is.
Yeah, that's a great point, Logic. And I'd argue that those different business models are the reason why we've seen the expansion of the gaming industry the way we have. Well beyond what we probably thought, 40 years ago, right? Because 40 years ago, there's PC, but I always feel like 40 years ago, everything was kind of samey or the same.
Well, and Christopher Dring really articulated that really well in this interview with Port. He said, look, 30 years ago, the gaming industry, gaming market was relatively easy to understand. It consisted of children, right, who were 5 to 10, 11, 12, right, who were playing consoles on the central TV fixture in a family household. and teenagers who had graduated and leveled up, not graduated from high school, but like leveled up out of that regime into like they had consoles in their room. And so you kind of had two demographics, right? You had people who were fine playing Casey Munchkin and Pac-Man, Burger Time. And then you had this additional demographic who wanted to play Mortal Kombat and like more sophisticated stuff, and they were getting in like the RPGs and stuff. Today, that's not the industry. The industry is, I wrote an article about this a couple of weeks ago. The industry is a niche of niches. It's super complex. You can complain about Project Helix, but I'm telling you, there's going to be a niche that is there for Project Helix of consumers who want that product. It'll be in the single digit millions of numbers, but there's a niche, right, for that product to land and find a consumer base.
110%. Just like the same for the Steam machine, right?
Yep.
Or PC. But to your point, like, and I'm going to bring this point up because I know something, because you mentioned Game Pass. Like, I think you mentioned something, in fact, not everybody wants Game Pass. I know somebody's going to be like, oh, you guys are always hating on Xbox. Well, to counter that, like, I even argue that not everybody wants these, big AAA story-driven narrative, wide path linear games like from Sony. Not everybody wants that. And we know this because you look at the success of like Nintendo Switch 2, right? You look at games like, I think what Ben Porter said, not everybody wants to play, games that have high graphics. You look at these games like Roblox. Steel of Brain Rot is a great example of that. Like, I'm watching my kids play this. I'm like, why are you playing this? Like, it looks terrible. But of course, I have my mindset's different than theirs, right? To them, that's not as important as, is this game fun? Am I having fun, playing with my friends? Let me pull the slide back up here. Attention and value allocation, global playtime has remained flat, with the top 20 titles still taking up 50% of playtime. The share is shrinking, most notably on PC. Let's see here. AAA games, genres, shooter, AAA driven genre, shooter, battle royale, sports are seeing structural decline, with growth segments like sandbox not fully absorbing lost hours. Sandbox audiences are less likely to play AAA games, especially annual sports, story-led single player. Playtime share to new releases remains stable. Breakout hit audiences are less likely to overlap with annualized sports franchises. Market concentration, titles ranked 21 plus are capturing a growing share of playtime. The PC showing the strongest shift since 2022. Logic, it almost seems like post-COVID, right? There's just been this shift in the industry. Like, and I mean shift, I mean like in terms of growth. Like, I feel like post-COVID, like we're seeing more growth on PC.
Yeah, but I think that story is a little more complex. Like, you're
yeah.
Yes, you're seeing growth, but you're also seeing growth in player numbers, which means your ARPU is going down.
Yes.
The other thing to understand, and like this is kind of a shocking realization, I think, that nobody talks about. So the PC industry is what, like $46 billion ish?
Yes.
PlayStation makes $32 billion a year off of just the console. So yes, there's large growth on PC, but PlayStation literally makes 75% of what the entire PC gaming industry does by itself. And that is all on console, because I deducted the 500 million from their $32.5 billion in revenue, right, to account for the small paltry amount that they make off platform.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we have these conversations, people just rapidly skate by that.
ARPU.
I'm like, no, you need to put that into context. Like, you need to understand what that means. You know? So Josh is asking the question, what's shrinking on PC? And just a highlight note, despite the success of Battlefield 6, Arc Raiders, and titles like Counter-Strike 2, the amount of playtime spent on shooters dropped 5% year on year. Meanwhile, the Battle Royale genre dropped heavily, down 27% in terms of playtime. This was mostly due to declines for Fortnite and Call of Duty. Now, one thing I'll say when these things come up, I firmly stand on this square now after kind of really looking at it over the last year and a half, is we've definitely seen indicators where it can be firmly understood now that like the engagement time numbers are numbers, but they are not always directly correlated to spend. So just because there's a drop doesn't necessarily mean that the spend is going down. But you know, but in this case, it's probably a little more directly, linearly correlated than maybe some other genres might be. 27% significant. Like at that point, I'm like, okay, even if the spend doesn't linearly correlate, it's still significant, right? Just because you're down in the threshold of it's almost down, down a third, right? So that's huge. So there's most likely a contributory impact, on what's going on for those guys in terms of revenue, and then you see things like Epic cost of V-Bucks, right? That's probably because you got a monetization issue going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something else I thought was interesting. Premium growth is driven by sub $50 games. The $30 to $50 segment leads across platforms. Sub $30 thrives on PC via breakout indies. The sub $30 game thriving on PC kind of made me think about. I know there's some varying some theories out here why PlayStation stopped bringing its first party single player games day and date to PC. Some have speculated that has to do with the eventual release of the Steam machine, but also I think this maybe ties into that sub $30 game, right? That's where these games thrive. That the behavior of PC consumers is a bit different than console consumers. You talked about ARPU, right? I think it's important to note too. I think like that also gets lost in the conversation, right? Where people are like, "Oh, because remember the argument was it's easy money. It makes sense to put your games there." Well, does it? Does it? If the consumer that sits on that platform isn't likely to spend $70 on a game, they're maybe more likely to spend in that sub, $30 to $50 range. Or maybe they're more likely to wait for a sale, or they're probably playing different types of games.
Well, it's extremely complicated. Like that's this data and like some other data. So,
Yeah.
was I just now? The $30 to $50 price band is the fastest growing tier across PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. 26 games priced below $30, generating more than $5 million in revenue last year, up from 17. So that's significant, right? But that number is still incredibly small, right? 26 games priced below $30 are breaking 50 million. Games that cost more than $50, and this is right. This is where we get to those contradictory statistics, where it's clear that you shouldn't just read one of these things and say, so you should put all your money on black. Okay, because games that cost more than $50 still represent nearly 80% of total premium revenues on console, but lower price titles are increasing, right? So the voice track here is that there's increasing opportunity being seen at those lower prices, but where the big money is being made is still on the high end stuff. PC is still mostly about microtransactions, but premium games were the main PC growth driver in 2025, up 11.8% year on year. So I'm not exactly certain, but I believe premium games are the $50 and above. They're not the cheapy stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, you're seeing increased opportunity going from 17 to 26 games that are breaking out at the low end, but the high end is the thing that is truly driving revenue growth. So again, all of these things like need to be taken into consideration in aggregate, right, to determine where people should place their bets. Somebody put it well in the chat, like developers when they're about to launch a game should look at where is their opportunity, not necessarily where are the trends. And then when we get into
great point,
is kind of the stuff you were talking about, which is that you need to just put your game over there. You need to understand that you're putting your game over into a highly saturated and highly concentrated market. I'm not going to go through all the stuff that we've talked through before, but again, 19,000 games put out on Steam, like 8% of those, right, of the new games, when you're talking about new games, 8% of the new games gobble up like 91% of the available revenue on Steam for that year, leaving 9% left over. The other 92% of inventory. Right. And you can see how very atomized that remaining revenue gets. And then you get the trend on Steam that gamers spend most of their money on games that are outside of 5 years old. So, again, you're going to put a new game on Steam, right? And your opportunity to strike iron isn't that high.
Yeah. Interesting comment here by Corey Massey. How do you spend thousands on hardware and $30 on games? It's like buying a brand new luxury car and $5 worth of gas.
So this is the thing too. Again, that's these weirdism contradict. The problem, Corey, from my perception, is that a lot of those trends are being driven by the 86% of people on PC Potato Nation.
I was just about to say that.
But it's kind of like what we talk about with Fortnite, right? Like Fortnite, the big money is made by the whales. It's not made by the millions of people playing Fortnite. It's made by the 10 to 15% who are really spending money.
Oh, or to be perfectly clear here, it's actually driven by Slow-Mo Backslap, who spends a lot of money on Fortnite.
On skins.
On skins, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, why are there not more people buying like the high-end games? Well, because the only people who can play those games and play them performantly are the 14% who are on high-end hardware.
Yeah.
An interesting inflection in the Steam hardware server, which I hadn't caught, is apparently the RTX 5070 is now like 12% of.
Is it really?
So it's actually like people on 5000 series cards on PC are actually pretty high. I think we've seen an inflection point where people have said like the 3000 series are really like where we need to move off of. So there's actually a pretty relatively high percentage, I would say, in terms of past history of people who have just shifted to current gen cards, and that's all happened like in the last quarter. I think part of this was also driven because the prices dropped out of the bottom of the 5070s. They had been elevated for a while, but in that November, December timeframe, like 5070s were available at very, very close to MSRP, and so I think a ton of people ran off and grabbed them.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think that's a great point. I mean, like, to answer Corey's question, like, it's a very small percentage of people, like you said, Logic, that have those high end cards, the 5080s, the 5090s, right? There's not a lot of you, Logic, and Nate's out there that are running those 58. So, apparently, I'm moving out of the cul-de-sac, so I'll be in that gated community soon. But I will. I mean, if I'm buying a 5080, you better believe, Corey, that I'm, buying, games that are going to allow me to take advantage of that, or games that I can use to take advantage of the 5080. And I may go back to some older titles like Cyberpunk. I may go back, just check out path tracing on that. May go back to Indiana Jones. May fire up the last Doom game. What was the last Doom game, Logic, that required
the Dark Ages?
Dark Ages didn't allow you to turn off ray tracing.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and Nate says a lot of PC dudes freak out if they have to pay $70. Yeah, that's true, Nate. I'm not one of them. But yeah, I know people, the Potato Nation, Potato PC Nation. So yeah, so I think that's important because that's where a lot of people miss the nuance, right? When they look at PC and they look at, they talk about, as we've said, when they generally just have conversations around trends in the gaming industry.
Well, yeah, just to tighten up those percent. So like, so on the Steam hardware server, again, the Steam hardware survey is not representative of 100% of the PC market. Significant size. It's 9% who are on an RTX 5070. And then I saw, and the other percentage that jumped out at me was 4.45% on an RTX 4070, 3% on an RTX 4070 Super, 4% on a 5060 Ti, 5%, 5.4 on a 4060 Ti. Right. So these are saturation numbers that I'm not accustomed to seeing. I'm usually accustomed to seeing them like smaller. 5060s at 6.5%. Those aren't great cards, by the way. Those are modern cards, but we're also talking about a lot of 8 gigabyte, right, GPUs too. So those people aren't necessarily running out and paying, for $70 premium games. Then I saw a 7% here. Yeah, the RTX 4070. So again, those are a lot of your, cyber cafe, esport kind of stuff. So not necessarily buying those $70 games either, but it is an uptick from what I'm normally accustomed to seeing.
Yeah. This graph I have up here, post 2020 plateau is ending. Steady PC growth, console recovery, usher in new phase of expansion. Interesting, like they're projecting the compound annual growth rate for PC between 2025 and 28 to be 6.6% and console to be 4.4%. Steam-led PC growth compound structurally is set to surpass console revenue by 2028 as console relies on blockbuster releases. We talked about the Eastern Asian-led global user expansion. Talked about that. Growing Gen Z and Gen Alpha share of total PC players. We saw a little bit of that in the ESA survey, right? Gen Z, Gen Alpha playing on PC, probably more than Gen X. Was that?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So I ran into another person who I'll just qualify it as I vastly agree with their perception, but who was like, we're a dying breed. And I'm like, no, the data actually shows that the younger generations are actually playing on console and PC more than our generation.
Yeah. And actually the ESA survey showed that Gen Alpha, Gen Z are actually playing on consoles more than we are. So Valve's ecosystem deepening beyond the storefront. We're seeing that right now, right? With the release of the Steam Machine. On the console side, Nintendo Switch 2 and first-party strength, broad premium sale, major releases, including GTA 6, higher premium and subscription pricing. We're seeing that. Gen 10, the Gen 10 cycle timing, 2027 to 2028, but limited player growth.
Just one other highlight note to kind of talk about where the revenue density is and differentiated in the markets. 2/3 of console revenues come from the top 20 games, whereas on PC, half of the revenue came from games outside the top 20. On PC, games outside of the top 20 accounted for 42% of playtime, a rise of 6% year-on-year. On PS5, 38% of playtime was spent on games outside of the top 20, up 3%. On Xbox, 45% of playtime was outside of the top 20. So again, as you go around to these platforms, there's high concentration in the top games. Then that loosens up when you compare console to PC, and then the spend also loosens up on PC, where a lot of the spend is going on games that are not in those top 20 revenue generators. So again, people go, why is PlayStation? Another difference of opinion I had, with a person, who's like, I hear what you're saying about exclusives, but it doesn't, it's not commensurate with, denying broad swaths as a market. And I'm like, broad swaths as a market, like 8.3 million people on average were buying those games per year. Let's compare that to the PlayStation console install base, and you're talking about less than 10%. So again, does it make sense for me to put my games on an addressable market where I see demand at a less than 10%, right, demand basis, for me to earn 1.5% of my overall revenue? Like there's math in there that starts to not make sense, right?
Yeah, that's a great point, Logic. This graph actually, and I looked at this before the show. This is actually really interesting. It kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about console leads in ARPU, average user spend. PC winning player scale, and then console leading in average user spend, showing major regional differences. So you see PC revenue, South Korea tops, and you see Germany, United States, China there, UK, Canada, France, Mexico, Brazil. On the console revenue side, you see US tops, followed by the UK. Some things to note on the console side I thought was kind of interesting. Obviously, North America has the highest ARPU, least platform skewed ecosystem. Western Europe, PlayStation led mix, multi-ecosystem strength. Japan, number 2 by revenue, switched to tailwind despite weaker JPY. What is JPY, Logic? I'm just what that is. What's that?
The Japanese yen.
Japanese yen. Okay, there you go. China, growing premium spend, switch to gray market and PS5 momentum. And then on the PC side, they talk about China, Tencent, NetEase dominate engagement and revenue. North America, mature, high ARPU market with strong premium uptake. So interesting. We see that both in the console and PC side here in the US. South Korea, publisher connection, Nexon, RPG heavy engagement mix. Europe, structurally PC oriented with deep legacy engagement. This is, I think this is kind of what you were alluding. Well, you made the comparison of PlayStation, right? Their PlayStation revenue, being what, 32 billion.
Yep.
Yeah, and then here's the revenue, right? Share of yearly PC revenue by business model, 43 billion, 2025. You'll see the breakdown here. Microtransactions. Now, this is all slow-mo, by the way. We thank slow-mo for this. 20.6 billion. So 48% of revenue on PC is microtransactions. 29% is premium. 8%, I'm sorry, 20% is downloadable content. 3% is in-game subscriptions.
So again, this reveals where you want to place your bets, right? PlayStation, if I'm going to go multi-platform, concurrent multi-platform, it's going to include my multiplayer games, because my multiplayer games are going out to an addressable market where 48% revenue gain is around microtransactions. I'm maybe not wrapped around the axle about putting my premium games over there because only 29% of the market is interested in that. And it's highly competitive. And I'm going up against, a crappy game like Civ 7, right? Who's literally,
you really don't like Civ 7.
No, it's a great statistical outlier. Like, it's amazing. Like,
but it's doing well on Steam.
Yeah. Here we have proof of a game that is just not really a good game, and is definitely not good in terms of just being historically comparative to the rest of the franchise. And here it pops to the platinum tier on Steam in 2025. And like, that's your competition, right? It's kind of like if the refs were so bad in the NFL, and some people will argue that they are, if the refs were so bad in the NFL, right, that you would put all this effort into practice to go play a 9-9 team, right, 9-7 team in the playoffs, right? And they have just a statistically high, right? They're covering the spread, right? Because of the refs. Like, at a certain point, you go, well, I don't know that it makes sense for us to put an extra 2 hours of practice today.
Yeah.
So, and then you go over to this other side of the place again. $45.3 billion. The other part I want to mention of like the shocking realization is the shocking realization that needs to be understood about like where PlayStation is their console business is literally twice the size of their two other competitors. So it's $32. They're making all that on console. There's only $45 billion being generated on console. So they're making literally 75% of the money that's being made in the console industry. And the other two competitors, well, I mean, Nintendo makes less than $16 billion on console. Right? So we're twice the size, they're twice the size of Nintendo.
Very high margins, I might add, though.
Yes. Yeah. And so the Xbox business, which we don't have complete transparency into, but I have to believe with only a 30 million console install base, that a ton of their money's got to be coming from PC. And the other thing is, in the Microsoft, right, in the Xbox earnings, that includes like a lot of their B2B arrangements for like hosting development environments for people.
That's a great point.
It's everything.
Yeah, it's everything. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this is. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Logic.
No, I'm just saying. So again, people go, there's this constant doubt about the PlayStation business model. I'm like, I hear what you guys are saying, and I understand how you could believe it, but I don't think you're looking at the analytics and what the analytics say.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they say the console, their business model is antiquated, right? And then I'm like, okay, but look at the number here. Premium, right? We're talking about premium titles, 50%, right? 50%. I mean, this is why PlayStation's putting out premium content, right? The interesting thing, what I love about these two charts here, Logic, is that a lot of the argument, I know we talked about this earlier, but a lot of the argument around PlayStation putting their games on PC was on the idea that it just made sense. More games everywhere. It's like I said earlier, like the spend's different on PC. Like half of the spend on PC is microtransactions. And to your point, like if I'm PlayStation, I'm probably not. I'm going to be more inclined to put games, live service games, where they are microtransactions because I know that's where the spend is. Versus, okay, less than a third, about a third of spend on PC is premium. Like, but then the behavioral, like the spending, the consumer there is different. The spend is different. Like, does it make sense? And it was simplified to, well, more games everywhere equals more money. It's easy money. It just makes sense. You have more gamers out there on PC. It just makes sense. And never took into account the spending behaviors of PC consumers. On top of that, never took into consideration that majority of the PC gamers are on potato PCs, right? And it goes back to what we used to say, what we have said is the juice worth the squeeze, you know? So, I love this chart here, these two charts of share of your yearly PC and console revenue by business model. Look at microtransactions, 27% on console, and subscriptions, 18%. Actually, the microtransactions were down 6.3% year over year for 2025. Quick summary here. After 5 years of stagnation, revenue growth has returned, but is being driven by structural divergence across platforms rather than broad engagement expansion. PC growth is structural and scale led. Console growth has returned, but it's monetization and cycle driven. And regional dynamics split reinforce the split. Emerging markets are driving player scale, especially on PC, often at lower ARPU, while mature markets such as North America and Japan continue to generate higher console spend but face slower demographic expansion. All right, Hamp. Anything else?
No. I mean, I think Texas Lee makes a comment. I mean, I think what he's saying is I mean, that's still half the revenue versus all three accounts. Yeah. Okay. Maybe he's agreeing with what I'm saying. So look, that perfectly clean, right? The whole thing about like PlayStation making 75% of the revenue, like there's clearly some overlap or slop in there. The math is not nice, right? But it's relatively accurate in terms of ratios, right? The point is just to understand where the preponderance of revenue is being generated, right? Relative size of the PlayStation console business in comparison to Nintendo and Xbox. Like is the main takeaway from that is just understanding that realization.
Yeah. Yeah. Logic. Speaking of slop, a lot of backlash, a lot of anger over Nvidia's DLSS 5. Honestly, Logic, like I'll just give my 2 cents here. I thought what they showed looked great. I mean, I don't like I understand the concern that people have with AI. I get that. But honestly, like outside of like that, I mean, I looked at some of these screenshots, with DLSS on, DLSS 5 off, or DLSS 5 on, DLSS 5 off, and I think a lot of the anger, I think it started with Resident Evil Grace's, DLSS 5 image. I thought it looked great. I thought it looked awesome. And Leon, I thought it looked like I'm like, okay, this is awesome. I know there's conversation is does this undermine the artistic intent by the developer? I'm not so sure it does. Like I did see people say, "Oh, well, Grace looks totally different." I don't think she looks different. It still looks like to me, it looks like Grace. You know, it looks like a next gen version of Grace. Leon looks like although he looks like Nick Carter a little bit in the DLSS 5 image, but I don't know. I wasn't as angry about it, or I wasn't angry about it at all compared to some of the other gamers that that I saw on Twitter and some content creators and their reactions to what Nvidia showed. So, what are your thoughts, Logic, on the DLSS 5 backlash here?
Ooh, how much time do we have?
That's why I said I was going to give my quick 2 cents because I had a feeling you had a lot to say here.
Well, it's just a few things. So first of all, just perception. And I won't say that this is definitive, and so people shouldn't think what they're thinking. I'm saying that it creates enough of a scratch of difference that they should consider it and should consider that their perception may not be like an absolutist like truth. So we have this thing, and people could definitely disagree with me because this is definitely anecdotal, but we have this thing where, and I'm going to pick on actresses, right, females, because it seems to be primarily a female thing. We have this thing where actresses, right, will show up like on the red carpet or in a music video or whatever photo opportunity, right, and will look a certain way, and they will get accusations of, well, they got work done, they're rapidly losing weight or whatever, more so the they got work done type of stuff, right? And the assertion will be made from their PR and their camp that, it was lighting, it was makeup, or they'll look a certain way in a certain movie, right, or a TV episode, and they'll say, it was lighting, it was makeup, it was whatever. And typically we give lots of credence to they've had work done, right? But then sometimes there's a realization, or maybe there's a lack of volume around, is then like 3 weeks later, right, in some time frame where it would have been impossible for them to get additional work done to reverse, right, what people are accused, like they show up and they look like they normally look, right? So I think we definitively have these things in the real world where we have examples of somebody's physical appearance sometimes looks different because of lighting or makeup. We have dudes who, like, we put on a certain black t-shirt and we look a certain way, and then we put on a different black t-shirt and we look muscular. Right? So we have these things. So that's pit stop 1. Like pit stop 2 is, as far as I can tell from the documentation, like there's been all these accusations that like they're obviously changing the developer's geometry. What the documentation says is that there's been no change to the geometry engine, right? There's like at least 3 stages in the DLSS pipeline. Like one of those is geometry, and there hasn't been any change, right? This is a complete add-on to the DLSS processing pipeline that adds neural rendering. So the other 2 stages, there have supposedly been no changes. And I'm like, if you want to contend that in those other stages they have been changing geometry, that's fine. But it dovetails with my other point, which is, okay, but then in that case, they've been changing geometry the whole time and you haven't had a problem with it. So one of my things is DLSS has been around since 2018. I would expect that if you're making a credible, valid, non-engagement farming, non-clickbait, non-outrage farming pushback on this technology, I would assume that you've been pushing back on it since 2018. And I would also assume that you've been pushing back on both DLSS and FSR, because they are both generative AI technologies. When we talk about, then if you want to qualify that, well, I was fine with it before, but like this is too much, what I would say is, we've talked very frequently on the show about how for a software developer, for a technology implementer, customer feedback has to be objective. It has to be actionable. And it has to be quantifiable. So a technology implementer isn't particularly crazy about, oh, well, this is fine, but this is too much. Because now I'm in an entirely subjective rubric that's going to change, right, across multiple customers, and I can't figure it right. So the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push the technology. I'm going to wait to see how the market responds. Because responding to everybody's like, well, 5 shakes of salt is okay, but this customer says 6 shakes of salt is too much. Like there's nothing really that a technologist can really do with that. So I think there's a lot of, and my other big thing is, and then there were a lot of like, oh, this thing was running on 2 RTX 5090s, and like when it comes out, like, only 5090s are going to be able to run it, and they're going to run it at 13 frames per second. Let's not be ridiculous and hyperbolic, right? Like clearly, if if Nvidia has only optimized this thing to the point where it only runs on 5090s, they're not going to push the technology out because what good does that do them?
It's not, no.
Given the small percentage of people that are on 5090s.
Yeah.
So
dual 5090s at that, but yeah.
Yeah. So it was an early stage tech demo. Quite honestly, I don't know why they revealed it this early. I felt like it's unnecessary. But I say the same thing about Project Helix. I don't really see the point in like why they would have revealed Project Helix. And if you listen to the Moore's Law is Dead episode, it's because there was a sense that a mass panic was starting and that it could impact decisions that developers were making. And so it was to get out ahead and quell the wave of terror that was sweeping throughout the industry. Yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe the industry was getting spooked by this rumor that there's going to be no new 5000 series cards this year, no mid-gen refresh, no 5000 series supers. I don't know, but my thing is, regardless, it's an early tech demo. It's obviously going to be worked on. It's obviously going to be refined. It's obviously not going to be fielded until like some large percentage of the product SKUs can run it. I don't think it warrants necessarily like all the kind of the wave of fear, right? That's sweeping throughout. And at the end of the day,
I think part of that fear and anger is because so the word AI is there, right?
Well, yeah,
and I get it. Like I understand people's concerns or trepidations they may have regarding AI. I get it. I have some of that, but I mean, like Corey Matt says, he says it's I would rather have better performance than a filter that doesn't improve the game in meaningful terms. I don't know what you mean by meaningful terms, Corey, but I think a lot of us, many of us, have wanted and always advocated for better graphics, right? And I just think that. I think this is kind of where the industry is heading anyway. I think the future of graphics isn't just brute forcing hardware to get better graphics. I think it's going to be through things like FSR, PISR. Microsoft has like DirectML and and Nvidia with DLSS. I think that's just kind of way the industry is heading anyway. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Logic.
So I don't want to so Corey Massey brings up a point that is valid in the social context of what people have been asking for. But I will say it's a very age-old conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like since this began, even before we had AI upscaling, it's always been it's the argument between Nvidia and AMD, right? In the area of ray tracing. Would you prefer better raster or would you prefer ray tracing? So would you prefer better performance and more frames or would you prefer image quality? And I will admit for a very long time, I was concerned about more frames and still will lean towards frames depending on what genre. If I'm playing a racing game or I'm playing a first person shooter, I care about frames. I don't care about ray trace, about image quality. So I tune all the image quality stuff down and I do what I need to do to get the most frames out. But then if I'm playing like a beautiful like a Resident Evil 9 game where I'm not that wrapped around the axle about frames, then I juice the image quality. So I kind of see that point, but I will say that it's definitely a bifurcation in the industry. Like when we look at Resident Evil 9, like Resident Evil 9 is not a game that I'm concerned about getting 144 frames per second.
No,
because that doesn't necessarily do me any good. And then there was there's a follow-on sweep of outrage going because the words coming out that like the developers like didn't have anything to do with the tech demo, and I'm like, okay, but that kind of makes business sense. Like, do we think Nvidia would have gone to studios who are working on getting their next game out and said, hey, can you break off 10 people to like spend LOE on, which we're not going to pay you for, right? So you're taking it out of your own overhead, right? To spend time on cutting a tech demo using this new technology so that we can sell more GPUs. It's probably not the way it's going to, when Valve was prepping the Steam Deck to go to market, they also didn't talk to developers about getting their games running on Steam Deck. Steam Deck verification came out after they got the Steam Deck, fielded, or after they did the initial demonstrations and marketing for it. Valve did that on their own. So, and there was some pushback from developers, right? When like Bungie pushed back and said, "Hey, hold on a second. Like we didn't say we want our game running on this thing. You guys need to come talk to us." It's the same thing with GeForce Now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Nvidia did that all on their own, and then some developers said, "Hey, hold on a second, we didn't license you to push those games out right over the cloud."
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So, and again, I'm not saying people shouldn't feel outraged, or I'm definitely not saying from a stylistic, artistic perspective, like you can't like it. What I'm saying is, I think you're reacting with dislike towards something that's not fully baked yet, and that we don't know how it's going to roll out. I think maybe the last thing I'll say is, so Nvidia did this tech demo on their own because it's their tech, right? And it made sense to apply it to games that are already out. You're obviously not going to apply it to a game that hasn't released yet because you probably don't have the code for the game.
I thought, by the way, I thought Starfield saw the biggest benefit from DLS 5.
Right. So in the future, the way this will work is obviously Nvidia will include DLSS 5 in its SDK, and it will be in the hands of the developers, and the developers will roll DLSS 5 into their game if they choose to implement it. And so the game that will come out will be a game from the developer. There's a lot of argument that, like, well, Nvidia is changing the artistic vision. Let's hold on. Let's think about how software development works and how games are going to come out. If the software developer is leaning on a technology that's been given to them, then the thing that comes out of it is their artistic vision. It's not Nvidia's. Nvidia just gave them the tools. That's no different than Epic giving people Unreal Engine 5. And in particular, the more tangible example is, to me, I would say ray tracing. Developers couldn't implement lighting models that are as dynamic and have the image quality of ray tracing. They couldn't do it. They didn't have the technology. As human beings, we don't do a complete 100% accurate job of, in an artist render, calculating all of the various light sources in a scene and where they may be reflected. So they got a computational lift. So if you're playing a game with ray tracing, you're playing a game that utilizes a tool and leans on a technology that gave a lift to the artist's vision. That's not what somebody drew in an artist render.
And that's what's happening. That's what's happening here with DLSS 5.
Yeah, so I think the realization, one of the articulations that I made is, I think maybe a thing that we need to think about is, we need to think about that fact that a video game is not an entirely human handmade creation, right? It is a human crafted vision combined with computational lift and tools. And that is what video games have always been. That's not new. And that is what differentiates a video game from a sculpture or a hand painting.
It's a great point.
Right? That is what a video game is. So again, we're reacting to this new technology as if it's somehow altering the definition of what a video game is, and I don't feel it is.
Yeah, I don't disagree with your logic.
And you'll be able to turn it off if you don't like it.
I was just about to say that it's optional, just like DLSS is optional now. Again, like I said, I thought the images look great. I thought they look more lifelike. I'm always looking for improved visuals. And I get, it's funny, like I hear people talk about diminishing returns and like graphics can get any better. I'm like, well, but they can. And we're kind of seeing that here. Yeah, and I just don't have an issue with it.
And again, I'm not telling you can't like it. What I'm telling you is, I feel like you're reacting to the thing that's not going to be the thing. Now, if you want to dislike what you saw, you're free to do that and have that argument with BRAP, because he's saying he liked what he saw. That's a different argument.
Whoa. We're not doing that. Look, I don't have an issue with people saying they don't like it, I don't have an issue with that. I'm just saying BRAP likes it. BRAP thinks it looks great. BRAP thinks it's a like, outside of like brute forcing hardware, like brute forcing image quality through hardware, which I think would be probably expensive. I don't have an issue with this. I mean, to me, this is no different than, when they first introduced DLSS with ray tracing, right? You talk about lighting, illumination.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too. Like, look, real world, there are tons of people, so like a significant amount of people who don't like ray tracing and feel the same way, feel like it alters the artist's vision.
Yeah.
I think those people turn ray tracing off. I don't know that those people have stopped buying video games. I don't know that those people have gotten out of video gaming. I think they just turn ray tracing off.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember when I saw videos of the path tracing for Cyberpunk 2027, I was like, this is awesome, right? I mean, again, I mean, like I don't disagree with you. Like I think if someone like doesn't like it, that's fair, you know. Um, T-Rex says BRAP. They literally said it's generative AI doing that DLSS. I haven't seen that from Nvidia.
Yeah, but
but
that's why it's been generative AI. It's been generative AI since DLSS 1. That's not new.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm being emphatic, T-Rock. I'm not being angry. Right? Like the technology inherently in the definition of generative AI, that's what it is.
But logic. Yeah, go ahead. Well, I like to and T-Rock's right. Like it's generative AI. To your point, like it's been. Yeah, the CEO did tweet it. You're right. I actually did. I recall seeing that now. T-Rock, you're right.
Yeah, and again, I don't disagree. But my point is that that's not new.
Yeah, yeah.
DLSS 1. Like how else do you predict what additional pixels there should be in an image to upscale the image to 4K from a 1610p internal resolution? You do that with machine learning and AI.
Yeah, it's trying to figure out how to enhance it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is this, like, like well, to your point about it being generative AI, like I think maybe some people are reacting the way they are because it's so pronounced now, right? Like it's one thing to have it like have ray tracing, path tracing, or better lighting, better foliage, trees. You know what I mean? Like
now I'm gonna give you we're not doing that.
Well, but let me just
go ahead.
Let me just like I get that, but I think in this instance, like because it's a character model, right? It's really dramatic. I don't know if it was dramatic as like maybe it was as dramatic. Maybe it was a couple years ago when we first saw ray tracing or path tracing, right? But maybe this is a bit more dramatic for some people because it's the actual character model, and you see it like it's so lifelike. And I understand like that perspective. Oh, this kind of looks like AI, right? Like an AI generated image, and like some people say it's AI slop. So I think like maybe some of the backlash is because of that, because it's so pronounced, right? It's really taking someone's face in a game and make it look so lifelike, as opposed to, Night City and all the lighting in Night City, the shadowing, the water. I think that's a bit different. Maybe that might be an easier not pillow. I wonder if that's just an easier pill for people to swallow, as opposed to a character model on their face and actually seeing these more lifelike images.
So maybe it's some of that. I am absolutely convinced that because the term generative AI has become so hypercharged in 2025, 2026.
It's the boogeyman.
There are people who are reacting it simply because of the use of the term generative AI. So in T-Rock, again, I'm not fighting with you, but I am going to hard push back on the notion giving a false representation of what it is completely. I would encourage you to go read the technical documentation of what DLSS 5 is and find a write-up that articulates the stages of the DLSS pipeline and look at what neural rendering does. To me, it's difficult for me to sync with the notion that it's a false representation of what it is if you haven't read the technical documentation. Because I would contend then that you may not be fully aware of what DLSS actually does and what the neural rendering bolt-on is to it. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying, but outside of that, like I don't agree with you that it's a false representation of what it is completely. Particularly when you use those terms like completely. We want to say that maybe there's some marketing in there, sure, but like the notion that it's that it's a lie, like it I'm not able to sync with that.
Mm-hmm. Let me get the super chat here. Cycle Gamers with a $2 super chat says, we wanted the Matrix demo. It's here and people complain.
And looking at Innate's comment, which I think just highlights kind of what we're looking at, right? I mean, I do feel like it pretty significantly altered Grace personally, right? And in the context, it significantly altered Grace's appearance because it was a DLSS effect that was layered on top of what you had already seen. In the future, you will not have seen, right, the character. You wouldn't have seen an artistic vision without, right, DLSS. You know what I mean? Like it'll be part of the package. So, and it's all coming from the developer. So we're reacting to how Nvidia layered this stuff on top of games that are already done, but in the future, it's all going to be coming from the developer. So if there's two character model presentations, and there's one you like and one you don't like, that's fine. But they're both coming from the developer, right?
Meaning that in the future, like this is going to be a representation, right?
It's gonna be baked in.
Maybe not this fall, but this is going to be, to your point, this is going to be baked in. This kind of character model is going to be baked in, and we're not going to know any different. Like we're not going to know what it would look like without DLSS 5.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. It definitely is. I think what caught me off guard, like I naturally was like, this looks great. So I was a little surprised that people were upset about it. But I think, again, like I said earlier, I think part of it's because it's generative AI and it's kind of it's the boogeyman, if you will. Look, and I get it. I have concerns about AI. I mean, I think I joke around. James Cameron warned us about AI, and so did Morpheus in the Matrix. So
yeah, but I want to, and this to me personally like highlights the ongoing dialogue. Right, the difference of that is this is not GPUs in a data center, right?
No.
Sucking all the water out of a nearby lake in order to generate these images. It's kind of funny to me. I would contend that there's probably people out there complaining who go to Chat GPT and Claude and generate like these fake images,
Mm-hmm.
or memes or use other image generation technologies where they are having that impact. Like this is a local GPU running on your PC. Now, maybe the other environmental impact was when they were training the models, so that I completely accept. But this is there are uses and applications for AI. They are not all the same, and there are some that fall into that bucket of like the things James Cameron warned us about, right? But then there's also application of AI, which is like simply enhanced search, right? So I don't have to run 10 Google searches to narrow down on a thing, but I can ask Chat GPT. And that's different than having Chat GPT generate my senior term paper, right, and not putting any effort into it. So there's shades of gray in this thing, but we're living in a world where, just like we talked about with the financials of the industry, like there's this very black and white, right, kind of dialogue about AI that I don't think is doesn't match to what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm. All right, Logic, want to move on from AI to
just before we move on, I do want to respond to T-Rock because I want to make peace with him. So yes, I don't disagree, T-Rock. So T-Rock is saying they should have been a lot smarter with how they presented this. I agree. Like a big, huge problem with AI is that all of these guys are super bullish on it, right? And look, Jensen has a lot of reason, right, to kind of have a lot of swagger, but he just came out and like plopped this thing on the table and was like, people are going to feel great about it. I agree with you. I don't really understood what drove the whole marketing thing, and there's probably, like I said, there's probably more truth in this being the reality was this wasn't for us. Just like the Witcher 4 demo, right? The Witcher 4 demo was not for us. Lots of gamers reacted to it on social media, but the reality is that demo was for the developers. And I think that's a lot of what this was too. A lot of this was to message out to developers that this is an inbound technology and and to start that conversation. But it got exposed to the public and to gamers, and it went to Digital Foundry and all that stuff, which may not have been the smartest move. I'm sorry, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at some of the videos of DLSS 5 on start with running on Starfield. And actually, I think Starfield looks great. like it looks really good. But yeah, let me grab the super chat here. Dryad with the $5 super chat says PS6 and Helix are getting a version of this, aren't they?
I mean, they won't be getting DLSS. I mean, I'm sure AMD will do what it always does, which is copy Nvidia and have their own implementation of something that is trying to achieve the same goal.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I think we will see that their own version of it. I mean, if anyone needed help with AI, it's Bethesda. I don't disagree with you, T-Rock. Yeah, I wonder if this would have been better received had it been like a like tech demo, right? Kind of like what Unreal did with was it on PlayStation 5 that they ran that tech demo? And somebody mentioned the Matrix demo earlier. I think that was on Unreal Engine 5 too.
I mean, my thing is again, I'm not as reactionary to it, so I'm not as wrapped around the axle about the marketing, but I certainly understand how people can look at the marketing of my thing is why did we do this at all? Why didn't this thing just come out with I don't remember all this hoopla about DLSS 4 or 4.5.
I don't either, actually. Yeah.
I'm quite frankly, they didn't need to tell the public. I don't really understand why Digital Foundry was in on it. Why? What does it buy you? Unless you're trying to push a round of buy of GPUs, which I don't think makes sense. My personal conspiracy theory is so maybe what we've been told that there's no new RTX 5000 mid-gen refreshes coming this year, maybe that's not correct. Because what I could see this making sense for is if you tech demo this and inform the market that DLSS 5 is coming, and then later you announce, even if it's one SKU, even if it's just an RTX 5070 Ti Super, right, or 5080 Super.
Oh, you know how mad that would make me.
You're still going to be able to run DLSS 5.
Yeah, but probably, I mean, but okay. So here's the thing, right? This thing's running on two 5090s. So, what version of DLSS 5 would the 5080 get?
I mean, it would get DLSS 5. It would just be a matter of if it's a performance.
Okay,
so the way 4.5 worked is it's a performance hit and it scales down the stack, right? So you get a little bit of a performance hit on a 5090, 5080. You get an increased performance hit as you go down to 5070. 3000 series cards shouldn't bother running it at all, right? And then it's just a matter of playing with it to see, is it within your range of acceptability, right, on whatever card you're on. So, I mean, on a 5080, you'll be fine. I personally think.
Look, I hope so.
You're not going to get a performance hit that is really apparent to you as a gamer. If you're sitting there watching MSI Afterburner and you allow yourself to be conscious of the fact that you're getting 111 frames per second instead of 121, then yes, you'll see that. But again,
actually, that doesn't bother me. 120 to 111.
Yeah,
slow-mo it probably bothers, but not me.
Yeah, but we go back to the Resident Evil 5 example or Red Dead Redemption 2, right? If those are I mean, Take-Two's not, Rockstar's not going to implement DLSS 5 in Red Dead Redemption.
No, but did you see DLSS 5 running? I don't know if this was real, but somebody put something like GTA 3. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
If that's true, if that's actually a legit video using DLSS 5, GTA 3 looks like a brand new game. Now the animations are still clunky, the character animations, but visually speaking, I was like, whoa, if that's true. Oof. Speaking of Red Dead Redemption 2, you know, Logic, that's gonna be one of the first games that I play on the 5080. Like, I just can't like, that game I think I said this to you, a couple months ago, and I went back and played it. I think the game holds up pretty well. Excuse me. For being a game that's 8 years old. I mean, you know, even on the 3070, it looks pretty good. BRAP is about to rethink rethink the PC again. You're not wrong, Nate, especially if there's a 5080 Super on the horizon. All right, Logic. I do want to move on. Unless you let me cut you off. If you have anything else to say about the about
Yeah.
DLSS 5.
No.
All right, so oh shoot, what happened here? All right, here we go. Crimson Desert. Probably one of the what I would argue is one of the more highly anticipated games of 2026. Comes out tomorrow. The review embargo's up, and it currently sits at a 78 on Metacritic based on 85 critic reviews. I don't know, like 78, like if I think if I forget the rule of thumb here, at least as Greg Kasavin once explained to me when he was the editor in chief at GameSpot. He's nowhere at Supergiant Games. Like if anything in that like 70 to 79 range in terms of if you're a fan of that particular genre, means that you'll probably enjoy the game. So this game's sitting at 78. I don't know. Like I'm still kind of on the edge of this game. I know that it's going to come with. I need to figure out if it comes with the. I know at Micro Center they had it advertised as a free game if you pick up a build with an AMD CPU. I don't know if that's the case at Costco, um, but some of the things I've consistently seen is just like the great visuals, the open world. But I've also read things that the game feels like like the game, like the developers had lofty aspirations of kind of taking some of the best open world RPGs and games like The Legend of Zelda, um, The Witcher 3, and trying to sort of combine all the things that made those games great into this game and maybe necessarily didn't execute. And then I've also heard that the character development, world building isn't really that great in some of the reviews I read. I've read about there being some bugs, but the consistent is like, hey, like it's visually speaking, the game looks amazing. Character models don't look as great. Um, but that's kind of what more or less what I've been reading in terms of some of the reviews that have come out. But I don't know, Logic. Is this something that you might be interested in picking up, or is this a you think this might be a pass for you?
This is probably a pass for me.
Yeah, I think this game I've read anywhere from 110 to 140 hours to complete. Games Radar says Crimson Earth is messy, but as you untangle its mechanics and compensates for its flaws, elements of genius and wonder make the experience worthwhile. Take time to leave the beaten path and find out which of its many facets appeals to you, and you'll discover a game that's um, find a game that's far better as a sandbox than as a story. That's going again to go back to Stress. One of the complaints that I've heard or knocks against this game. Trying to go to here we go. Game Informer, Crimson Desert's ambitious open world game that buckles under its own weight, making a fun but flawed experience that will leave the player base divided. Um, I'm sorry, that was CG Magazine. Game Informer said Crimson Desert is a beautiful exploration-rich open world game that's a clear technological achievement, hampered by a cornucopia of little frustrations and a stark lack of narrative depth. GameSpot said Crimson Desert is a frequently thrilling game, elevated by an open world well worth exploring and hard-hitting combat that delights with its depth and emphasis on player expression. It might not always be the most cohesive game mixing high fantasy with steampunk and sci-fi elements, but there's nothing else quite like it. And I can't help but be impressed by how little restraint Pearl Abyss has shown and its commitment to delightful absurdity. In some respects, Crimson Desert might be too good to be true, but it's a world worth getting lost in. Yeah, that doesn't reach me like a 70 game, by the way. Insider Gaming said Crimson Desert is a game of extremes. At its best, it offers a breathtaking world filled with meaningful exploration, impressive scale, and genuinely thrilling battles. However, that brilliance is occasionally weighed down by an overabundance of unfocused systems, a weak narrative, and combat that struggles to maintain consistency.
I mean, I definitely want to see the Steam community user reviews. Drops tomorrow.
I was just about to say that it's going to be really interesting to see how the Steam reviews skew towards this game. I mean, I don't know. Like, if I get a free copy of this game because I bought a gaming rig with the AMD CPU, I'll play it. I don't know. I'm still on the fence. This is something I might be interested in. I don't know. I've got to see more gameplay. So yeah, I don't know. I meant to ask. I don't know if Slow Mo's picking this up. I meant to ask him earlier.
I thought I saw him. I briefly went through messages in his Discord, I think this week, and I thought he said he was getting this. I'll be on DPS tomorrow night, so I'll definitely.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, definitely check out DPS podcast tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. DPS channel on YouTube. Yeah, I don't know, Logic. Like, I was never really sold on this game. I felt like there was a lot of hype around this game. Like, people were like, "Oh, this thing looks amazing," blah blah blah. And I don't know. I've got to read some more of the reviews. T-Rock says slow mo backslap has it. I know that for sure. He has it on Steam. Okay, so I guess he did pick it up. I'll be interested to get his perspective on Crimson Desert. I don't know who else is playing this. I know the dad for my son's travel baseball team. He mentioned he was excited. He was going to pick this up. So I'll see him this weekend. So I'm interested to get his perspective on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think this is the exact. We've been going over a lot of the buying tendencies and stuff of people on PC and on Steam. I think this is a thing that's squarely in that bailiwick, right? It's you're going to spend money, but you're getting 100, 200 hours of content. So.
Yep, and kind of like a game that you could just keep going back to. Oh, T-Rock, is Erica picking it up? I haven't talked to Erica in a while. Let me reach out to her. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, if I get it with the new gaming rig, then yeah, I'll fire it up. Outside of that, I don't know if I'm going to pick it up, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, Logic. That's all I got for topics tonight, sir. Anything else you might want to discuss before you wrap up?
No, man. It's been a good discussion. I think we teased out a lot of things that sometimes get glossed over and not talked about at a detailed enough level. So I think it was good.
Yeah, no, great conversation as always. Want to thank everyone in the live chat for hanging out with us this evening. Means a lot. Appreciate the support as always. And do the YouTube thing. Hit the like button. If you're new, consider subscribing. Hit the bell notification. Logic will be on DPS tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, with Slow-Mo and Gaming Forte. And I don't know if you want to be found, Logic. I'll throw it out there. If you want to be found, let everyone know they can find you. If not, I completely understand.
No, you can hit up my channel, Rounding Off Infinity, on YouTube. I will be occasionally getting back to doing kind of a solo cast on gaming topics and gaming news items. You can check out Enough to Keep Going on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. We do that show 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Sundays, so you can always swing by.
Awesome. And I want to give a big shout out to Nate as well. Nate, thank you for taking my call the other day, walking me through the buying process of a new PC. Appreciate it. Appreciate the your insight and Priscilla's as well.
Yeah, I'd plug your podcasting name, but I don't know the times. So I know it's the Outer Gang podcast on Saturdays, but maybe you could put the time in the chat.
He just replied with no sweat. All right. All right. On that note, we're going to wrap up the show. Oh, 5 p.m. Eastern time. There you go. On Saturdays. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up the show. I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll be back next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So everyone have a great weekend. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching.